All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green. Make sure you subscribe so you know about all these cool interviews coming out every week. Now, today you might remember JIZZY Pearl best for singing with Love Hate, LA Guns, Ratt. He's the current singer for Quiet Riot, but he is also an accomplished author, and we are going to talk about the re-release of his book, I Got More Crickets Than Friends, and that's right after this. All right, here he is, back again. Back for more, JIZZY Pearl. Oh, where are you, JIZZY? There you are.
What's going on, guys?
So, JIZZY, before we get started, I want to point out that for people who want to hear about your career, we did an extensive interview that is also on this channel. So for people who want to know how he got in some of the bands and want to hear the history of Love Hate, that's out there. But today, this is like a book club. We're going to talk more about
your Oprah.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, you had a lot of choices. You could have went to the Oprah Book Club, but you chose me, and I'm honored. So we're going to talk about this book that amazingly is back in print 21 years later, and it's almost sold out already.
Yeah. I just decided to do a run of these books that I've had for a long time. Everyone's sort of been asking me for years, for the physical product, and it's, a hassle and it's expensive, but I decided to take the plunge and make a bunch of books. And it's been selling quite well, actually. Shockingly so.
I remember, JIZZY, over the years, because I've known you a long time, you were saying people always want me to put these books back out, but you were saying it's not like making a CD where you can carry these little CDs around. You at one point you have a garage filled with these big, heavy books. It's not something light. And again, it's not something that's cheap to manufacture. So I want to go back a little bit. First, I want to talk about how you wrote the book, and then we'll get into the whole process of putting this thing out. So it goes back to all the way when you're in Love Hate, right? That you start you start making notes and writing stories.
Actually, it was sort of post Love Hate. It was around 1997 or 98. My band had broke up, Love Hate. All the gear had been sold. It was like we did this massive, it was like a hurricane came and just wiped us clean from the face of the earth. Everyone left, and I was the only one still left in this building, this loft shithole in downtown LA. And so there was no band, there was no money, there was no record deal. And the internet has sort of just started, you know what I mean? Remember those geo sites thing? And if you had a website, it was actually a big deal. So you could do blogs. That was the big thing, is doing blogs. And so I just started writing sort of as a lark. And then some guy suggested I write a book. And I thought, well, I'm not really good enough. I'm not really a writer. But I guess, if you do it, you are a writer. So that's what I did. I just started writing and collecting stories, and then I put them in a book and put it out.
Yeah. And so I think when the book comes out, I think people are expecting an autobiography, and this is not a rock and roll tell-all biography, but at the same time, it is semi-autobiographical. And what I really like about the book is, so it starts this book is a collection of stories. It's not, it's very easy for people to read, especially non-readers maybe. You can pick it up and put it down and go through these stories. But one of the things that I find so cool is, so it starts with these stories that I can relate to, seeing part of your life, playing these house parties and things, and kind of these fun stories about just going out with friends. And it takes you to the scene. But then as it goes on, maybe some of the fantasy comes involved. And then you start to wonder what's real and what's fiction. And there's no warning either. So one second you believe that you're in a normal day with JIZZY Pearl, and then the next thing you're surviving a plane crash and people are cannibals. That's a spoiler alert. So I think that, you were ahead of your time in a lot of ways. Obviously, you're influenced by Bukowski and other writers of that scene. But for a rock and roll guy playing in Hollywood, I don't think that people were doing this. Nowadays, making books is easier. Self-publishing is easy. Guy played in one band, he puts out a book, and maybe it's a good book. But at your point, people weren't really doing this in 1999. And like you said, it wasn't an easy thing to sell. You weren't going to go out and get a publishing deal. So you tell me how the process happens.
Well, you mentioned Bukowski. He was obviously a main influence. Short story writer, a drunk, which I was at the time, a nightmare to be around, which I was at the time. He was sort of my role model as far as, somebody that was intellectual, well-read, but still a total fuck up. And I just sort of, got the inspiration to write from his lifestyle and his writing. And so the first book is definitely in that sort of a vein, and also, a little fantasy minded. But that's just taking a story, like taking an idea and going with it to like an absurd Monty Python style level of humor or gaudiness or absurdity or something like that. It's just, you just take it somewhere where you wouldn't, normally go. But I just learned to do it myself. I learned to do it on Word document, and I learned how to make it, format it, do it myself. And then I just went to a print shop in Los Angeles and, just gave them, they were a little freaked out about the cover. But yeah, I just did it myself. And it was, I got the big palette of books, like you said, and it was gnarly. You know what I mean? It was cool. And then I would just go to the post office, well, like I do now, just go to the post office with my little bundles and all sort of, done out of the house. So it's like deja vu.
Yeah, I would say that at the time that you're putting this book out, you're probably with LA Guns still, maybe towards the end of your run with LA Guns. And at that point, you were on the Poison tour, Poison's first tour back. You have Ratt on that tour, who you would later sing for, Great White, and you're with LA Guns and Poison. And so you're doing a lot of things. And we were talking about, your writing background. And I don't think that a lot of people know that at one point you were working with Seymour Butts, who's a legendary adult film guy. He had a reality show, I believe, on Showtime about the family business. And so what's funny is that you're this rock singer, but you're also a very educated guy. You can write. That's the one thing. I think everyone would like to write a book, but it's not that easy. But at the same time, sort of to pay the bills, you were writing reviews of adult movies and things, right?
Yeah. It's a funny story. It's actually, I write about it in my third book, which is coming out hopefully in a month. Mm-hmm. I have two other books, Angst for the Memories and Unhappy Endings, and they're both scheduled to come out in a couple of weeks' time. They're already at the printers. And in my third book, I got a call from this guy, Paul Gargano, who ran Metal Edge at the time, magazine. And I was in LA Guns. And he called me up out of nowhere. And he goes, this may sound strange to you, but would you be interested in being the senior editor of an extreme anal magazine? And I mean, I literally just said, you know what? That's the third time someone's asked me that today. Mm-hmm. I mean, so it went from there. And I went to an interview at this guy's house, your boy Seymour, who I changed the name, obviously. And I went to his house in Brentwood. He had this mansion. And, I talk about how I sort of became a pornographer or an editor of a pornography magazine. And it's trippy. You know what I mean? Because I was, everybody has porn or has seen porn or whatever. But when you're in it, when it's your business, and we would go to those shoots, which was, again, freakish, because you're there. And it's probably the unsexiest thing that you can imagine. sitting there watching people fuck on camera that don't know each other, don't even like each other, just going through the motions. And yeah, I mean, it ended up I had this job, and then I got into Ratt, and they still wanted me to do the job, but I was bringing my work with me. They go, well, you could just do it on the road, you know? And they were giving me these pictorials, dude, that were just so vile. And I just couldn't do it. I just, you know what I
So
mean?
were you having to? So was it your job to write the captions to the photos?
Captions, video reviews, but it just, you know how it is when you're writing that kind of copy. You know what I mean? You have to use the dumb cliche stuff. And it was funny at first, but then it just got, I don't know, it just got weird and dumb. And then I got into Ratt, and I was making good money, and I just thought, well,
Speaking of weird and dumb,
yeah. And I just thought, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I just called Seymour, and I said, you know what, thanks for the time and the job, but I don't, want to do it anymore. And that was it.
did you have a porn name, Jizzy? Not that Jizzy Pearl wasn't good enough.
Yeah, no, I believe my nom de plume was JP.
Right.
And he made a magazine, and like I said, it was a big deal. I mean, obviously, he's a rich dude, and he was very successful, and it was, like I said, I mean, it was an interesting thing, life experience, and I got to write a really good story about it, and it's in that third book that's coming out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and you know what? Good bread at that time when you're in between kind of gigs and no one really knows what's going to happen. The world wasn't the same as, the first time around with Love Hate. And so it's good work. And like you said, I think anything that makes a good story is an okay thing to do. And you certainly got one out of it.
Well, you know what? The whole reason for doing these books, one of the big reasons, is, when this thing happened, this pandemic, and we went into cryogenic sleep for a year, it really made me realize that you have to have alternate sources of income. You have to have a couple of different irons in the fire. And, so I'm not going to be a plumber. I'm not going to be, a landscaper. I'm not going to be out there in front of someone's house with the leaf blower. I just, so I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to invest some time and money and get these books. And I have a friend of mine that's working with me. His name is Brian. And he is a really smart guy when it comes to the Facebook ads and stuff like that. It's very there's analytics involved and algorithms. And so he helps with the ads as far as demographics and, who are you hitting with your audience and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's a whole science in itself, So the ads have helped a lot reaching people, and the Facebook, the Facebook, the Instagram, all the various social media outlets and stuff like that. But, I think, I don't know, I'm very excited. I got about 270 books from my first run, and I basically sold almost 200 of them in 9 days. So that's, as a mail order guy, that's pretty badass. So
it's definitely great, and that is a sign of these times. Now that you're able to do that, that wouldn't happen in 1999 to target people. And also, though, in all this time, you've been working, you've been in different bands, you've made new fans, but at the same time, there's been a demand for those books. They were on eBay for a lot of money, the actual physical copies, and so now seem to be, like you said, now we're home. Now's your chance to do it. And so you only run off 250, 270 copies of these. You sign them, you number them, and people were interested. And like you said, there's only so many that you even have left. And just you should explain where people can buy these.
Well, at the Shopify, at the website, JIZZYPEARL.net, that's where you can get them. It's funny. I've been pimping this whole time. where do you draw the line where you're too much of a, you know what I mean?
Watch my interview with Ron Keel, and you'll see a bell rings every time he pimps something, and you'll
Well,
be.
I guess that's what you got to do. I mean, Ron is one of those guys that's hustle, 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 and I get it. That's me. I'm hustle, 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 but I'm usually hustling gigs. I'm usually making phone calls and trying to book gigs and stuff like that. But this is a whole different thing, you know. Like I said, I mean, people have been wanting these books for years, and now I literally put them out 9 days ago, and you know we're kicking ass, and the other ones are coming out in a couple of weeks, so I assume that they're probably going to sell out in a few weeks like the other ones, and then I'll, you know, we'll do t-shirts, we'll do stuff, you know what I mean, we'll expand. And yeah, I mean, it's been a good experience, and actually it's rereading the books because I have to re-edit them and relook at them. And then you read it. I mean, it's just it's nice to be able to read it and go, well, fuck, you know. I mean, this is pretty good stuff. I mean, it's not, you know, gibberish. It's not me talking into a tape recorder like 99% of these rock books. You know what I mean? Just some guy talking, well, you know, the band was formed in 1988 and blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's real
Yeah.
writing from a
Or the
real
Motley
writer.
Crue
I mean,
book,
you know,
where everybody sounds like Neil Strauss. You know, you got
yeah.
4 guys who all sound like the same guy, yet maybe Tommy Lee says "yo" a few times. You know what I mean? So this is definitely what you wrote. It's different. I think people might enjoy different. I mean, rock biographies are great, but this is a pretty cool way for people to also determine what's real and what's not. I want to go back though, because so the book comes out in 1999. You get the gig with Ratt in 2000. Now, I remember at the time you were taking the books out on the bus with you, and you were selling books out of the bus basically after a show. If someone wanted to buy a book, they could come see you. What did the guys in Ratt think of that?
They didn't dig it. You know, they didn't dig it. Actually, Tracy Guns, you know, we sort of rekindle our friendship, and he goes, you can sell your books on at my merch stand, dude. You know, and I thought that was pretty cool of him. But I just, you know, I did it under the radar. You know, they wanted to make their merch, and I understand that. So I would just sort of go under the radar and sell my books, you know, from the bus, from the bay of the bus, and that was it.
Yeah, but it was kind of, you were kind of the unofficial meet and greet for a minute with people buying the books. Later, those guys had, you know, Blotzer at least had his own book, you know, with all the grammatically incorrect moments. But if someone that book has never been proofread. I don't know if you know that, but if you,
I read it. I read it.
yeah, you should have proofread it and sent it back with red.
He should have called. He should have gave me a lifeline. I would have helped him out.
Yeah, no, it might have helped. But anyway, listen. So you had the book and people were buying it, and then, like you said, you're doing the mail order business. So the book builds its own reputation, and then again, enough to spawn 2 more books, Thanks for the Memories and Unhappy Endings. And so, like you were saying, people go to jizzypearl.net. There's a place to order those. They're not up there yet, but they will be for sale. And it's a pretty cool way for people to have physical copies of these books, and I think a lot of people read it.
You know what's cool about it too is that, you know, I've been writing songs forever, doing records. I got this Golden Robot record that's one of the singles just got released, and doing a book is just different. You know what Bukowski sort of taught me is that you could write a story that's 8 pages. You could write a story that's 10 pages or 20 or 3. You know, as long as it's a good idea and it's well-rounded and it says something and it has a message, you know, there's no boundaries. So as a writer, like especially my Angst for the Memories book is very, very dark. I'm a big Stephen King fan. I don't know if you are, but you know, the way he describes graphic horror, just the way he describes it, you know, it's almost like you're in the room. And I explore that in my second book. I really go for some pretty gnarly visuals of graphic horror. And you can't do that in a song. I mean, unless you're in a death metal band. I mean, you know what I mean? You can't really explore different, you know, visual boundaries and stuff like that. That's what writing books is different from writing songs. It's just, it's a whole different way of expressing yourself. And you can say whatever you want. I mean, you can do whatever you can tell the characters what to do and they'll do it. You know what I mean? You're the boss, and it's pretty cool. I mean, when you have a good story, it, you know, it's badass.
One of the things that JIZZY, that I like reading the book, it reminds me, like, I don't know this guy. I know the married adult, get up early in the morning, go to bed early, JIZZY Pearl, you know. So I've heard the legends of this King Jizzo character that's sort of represented in the book. And so to read it is a sort of fun thing. One of my favorite qualities of yours, JIZZY, is you always have the best analogies for things. You have this knowledge of everything, that you can describe a situation. And most of the funniest ones you told me, we probably couldn't repeat or we get canceled. But you have a great way of setting a picture. And the book does that. You get so caught up in your voice and seeing the pictures. You know, this story about trying to get laid with a girl, but her overweight friend is there too, and she vomits.
That's a true story.
I had a feeling, but I think anyone who was in that situation kind of relates. And this woman vomiting, but your descriptions of things, they're almost, they may make you a little queasy. You know, kind of as you were saying with Stephen King, you get so graphic in these moments, in these descriptions. And I think that makes the book stand out. When I wasn't reading anymore, I still kind of heard your voice in my head laying these things out.
It's
I would say another way is
it's trippy. The guy that you know and that we've been friends for years in Vegas isn't the same guy that used to live in the building in downtown LA. That guy was like Caligula meets Attila the Hun, sort of. I mean, you can't even imagine what it was like to live downtown. You know, when I had my band with me, when Love Hate was with me, it was different because we were four musketeers against the world, and you know, there was safety in that. But when they all left, it was just me and the bums, me and the transvestites. You know what I mean? And it was heavy. I mean, I'd be walking down the street and all the bums knew me. I knew them. You know what I mean? We'd wave to each other and it was just, hi, how you doing? You know, they had their carts, and it was just, you know, it was heavy because you're trying to make light of it, but at the same time, it's an extremely dark, sort of depressing atmosphere. And so when in my foreword of this book, you know, I started writing on the walls of my little shithole apartment, you know, like Egyptian you know, when you go into Ramses' tomb, you see all these hieroglyphics all over the walls, and I guess they're describing Ramses's life, you know. So for posterity, when they open the tomb, you know, this is your life, Ramses, you know. So I just figured, fuck it, you know, to whom it may concern, I'll probably die in this room. So I'm just going to go for it. And I just wrote all over the walls, and my friends would come over and they'd see all this fucking writing all over the walls. And you know, obviously think I was probably pretty weird, but I just thought, you know, this is where I am right now. You know, and then I got into LA Guns, and I was on a bus and I was playing big shows again. And then I got into Ratt. You know what I mean? That's the thing is when it's darkest before the dawn, you know, and you lose your gig, you get another gig if you're good, you know, and then you get another and another. And here I am 30 years later, still shucking and jiving up on stage. And, you know, it's a great thing. I mean, I'm pretty blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can't help but think of like a heavy metal Larry David as you're reading this book. You know, if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David ends up surrounded in these just awkward situations that just you can't imagine them getting any more uncomfortable. And I feel like your book does that at times. You know, you're describing this normal day that ends up not being so normal, and your voice is this calming version of it, but you know that this story is about to get, you know.
Well, it is, you know, and that's the thing. I mean, you know, some people may not dig it because they're expecting like this cock rock, shagadelic, you know what I mean, thing. They're expecting to hear, you know, about the conquest, like a Gene Simmons sort of
Right.
a thing. But I can talk about my rock and roll life. You know, my rock and roll life is different. I've got to do things that most people never get to do because rock has its own set of rules. You know what I mean? It's got the peaks and valleys. You know, you don't have a regular job, you know, so sometimes you're starving and then sometimes you're eating filet mignon, and that's just the way it is. That's art. You know, being an artist is not having a steady paycheck most of the time, but you also get that freedom. So it's a trade-off, you know, so most people don't ever get to experience what I've been able to do. So when I talk about stuff, I don't want to, you know what I mean? There is the fantasy element involved in touring and being like Fonzie after the show, and you know, being able to do that, you know, thing-a-ling that you do, especially when you're playing arenas. I mean, you're Fonzie, dude. You can pretty much call the shots sexually,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is, you know, that's what I got into it for, you know, back when I was a kid. So it was all, I got to fulfill all my rock and roll Hammer of the Gods type things. So yeah, I mean, people want to read about that. They want to, they're going to get that. They're going to get that kind of stuff, the behind the scenes stuff. You know what I mean? That rockers like, you know, I mean, that we all get to do.
So I got to ask you, did you have any backlash from people that you portrayed in the book? Because obviously the names are changed and some people are composites. But was there anyone saying to you, I just can't believe you wrote that?
Um, in my second book, I got a lot of female people, a lot of females throwing the book at me. Um, Literally,
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of shitty feedback because I talk about groupies, and but you know, and maybe I was pushing buttons that they didn't like being pushed. You know, a lot of girls 20 years later don't want to remember the Hollywood scene as it was on the Sunset Strip. You know what I mean? And I'm not excusing myself. I mean, I was just as much a slut as everyone else was. You know, everybody fucked everybody. That was just, you know, the way it was. But I think girls have matured and they maybe look back on maybe the girl that they were 20 years ago, and they, you know what I mean? Maybe they get a little, they don't want to remember it. But so, yeah, there was some of that.
Well,
But
and you talk brutally honest. The way you talk about a situation is how guys would talk to each other. That doesn't necessarily translate to people outside that kind of little guy thing. You know, describing women or saying something like how you got to be the wingman to the one friend and things like this. That nowadays, if you try to say it, we'd all be in trouble for it. And I think that's, you know, you didn't hold back. You really
well,
spoke the way people relate.
well, and it's all true. I mean, it's all true. And women were just as aggressive back then as men, more so. You know, they were counting notches on their belt more than the rocker guys were. They, a lot of girls, you know, went out expressly every night with the intention of getting a guy, getting
Hmm.
the rock guy. You know what I mean? Counting coup. You know what I mean? Like in the old days. And it's true. And you know, so everybody did it. Everybody was a part of it. You know, if you were at the Rainbow at 1:45 when the bar let out, it was like a free for all. You know, everybody was sort of sizing each other up for the after party. You know what I mean? And that's the way it was. So it it might be embarrassing to some people looking back on it. You know what I mean? But it's all true. It's all
Yeah.
true.
You set a funny picture with that, the 1:45 at the Rainbow. For those who might not know, the Rainbow's the most famous bar and grill, Hollywood rock place on the Sunset Strip, and it's also LA has a curfew at 2 in the morning. So at 1:45, as Jizzy was saying, you have to start figuring out what your plans are for the night. So you see people figuring out, where am I going to get drugs for the night, and who am I going to hook up with? And then when the lights go on, because it gets bright right before 2, then you have to see if you actually made a good decision, because
Generally, you did not make a good decision. That's where some of the stories are too. It's always me sort of being this lost soul, buzzed and in a cab and just watching some girl shovel cocaine up her nose, and me going to her house. And this is before cell phones. How am I going to get home? I fucked up. You know what I mean? This wasn't a good idea. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's sort of like a Keystone Cops type thing of how's Jizzy going to get home in the morning safe and sound?
yeah, which I think people relate to, though. I think that especially then, we all got into a situation where we followed the wrong part of our anatomy, and then we went, oh my God, I have no money. I don't know how I'm getting home. I don't know where I am. And this book kind of, gives you this sort of bumbling, fun way.
Yeah, and speaking of the rainbow, there's a story in my first book about the rainbow. It's a true story. Me and my ex-wife and her friend went to the rainbow, and it's just, you go upstairs. You've been upstairs. That's where all the cocaine people and the weirdos hang out. And they were on the dance floor dancing, and just watching these clowns coming up to them, hitting on them aggressively over and over. The guys in the warm-up suits, the Adidas warm-up suits, and then some guy comes up to me, some mafia dude, trying to get me to sell my wife and her friend into white slavery. You know what I mean? Just shit like that. You know what I mean? Just and me just sitting there, kind of as an observer, just going, "Fuck! I mean, this is unreal. This is just Tuesday."
Yeah, another day at the office.
Yeah.
What does your wife think, Jizzy, of the book? Does she think you're crazy? What is that like?
She digs it. You know what I mean? She digs it. She digs the writing and stuff. She didn't know that guy, the Gisela character back then. I wasn't probably ready to be married and settle down 20 years ago. I got married briefly, and I wasn't mature enough to be able to be married. I was just, I wasn't ready. So now, yeah, I'm grown up and I'm ready and I'm married and it's great. And so the books come back, and now the books sort of, they're looked at as wonderful fiction. You know what I mean? Like Charles Dickens in Victorian England, and oh, the little match girl, and oh, those people were so, quaint and funny and this and that. So it's, I mean, we certainly wouldn't want to be now where I was then. I mean, that would just be too fucked up.
You probably wouldn't have made it. I mean, if you stayed on that pace, I'm not sure you would have made it.
No, because there are people still like that, that I know in bands that are still just sort of burning the candle at both ends. And it's just, you reach a certain age as a musician, and you have to defer to the fact that when you get up on stage, you're YouTubed probably every single time, and those YouTubes last forever. And I mean, you just don't want to be the romance. Look, 20, 30 years ago, Slash and all these people were on the strip, but there was no internet. You know what I mean? You'd see people fucked up every night, but there was no internet and there was no Facebook, so you could get away with it. You know what I mean? You could get away with being drunk on stage and being sloppy, and you just, you know, you just can't do that anymore. It's not, you know, it's not acceptable behavior to be a drunken
Yeah.
fuck up in
Well, I
2020.
remember Janie Lane, a great guy and a talented guy as well. But at the end of his life, he was pretty messed up. And I remember he did a show here in Vegas, and it was really bad. And that video went viral at the time. Everyone saw it. Or the drummer for bass player for Faster Pussycat falling down and hitting his head into the bass drum while Tammy saves the microphone and lets him fall. These moments, these things, like you said, Guns N' Roses probably has tons of these moments. Every band did. But all of a sudden, everyone became very watchful. And I remember doing shows with you where all of a sudden everyone was watching everyone in the band to make sure someone wasn't too drunk, and knowing if I'm playing in this club to 8 people, someone's going to film this,
Well, you just have to expect it. And like I said, I mean, and you know, Quiet Riot is a national multi-platinum band. And you know, you're not allowed to be an idiot. You're just not. You know what I mean? People are paying a lot of money, and you have to be as good as you can be, you know, and that's just the way it is. And if you don't adhere to those rules, your fan base will suffer, and it'll get out that you suck. And so,
yeah, and people are looking to tear you apart, especially
well,
with something like
certain websites are
yeah, some yes, but especially in something like Quiet Riot, which is different right now. There are people who are looking to say it's not good, or if it is good. Sometimes people look before they make their ticket purchase. Let me see if it's any good. And so there is
everybody bags on everybody. Somebody put up on social media a picture of me with a little vignette, a little picture of a Just for Men. You know what I mean? Oh, he dyes his hair black. I'm just thinking, motherfucker, you're bald.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You know, just check yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm with you. Well, I find that, yeah, as if you weren't born with that natural jet black hair that you're keeping for, myself as well.
No shit. If I didn't dye my hair, I'd look like Gandalf. You know, okay, I get it. It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have no, I'm owning it. So that's all good. If you're fat, you're fucked. If your hair's falling out, you're fucked. If you can't sing, you're fucked. You know what I mean?
What about if you're sending videos to people? We better not get into that.
Are you going there?
We better not. So Jizzy, getting back to the book, I've done some writing myself, and I always think of the quote, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's better to have been read than to have written. I find the process is very difficult. It's certainly nice if someone enjoys it later and reflects and reads it, but the getting there process, I think, is very hard. Do you think that you would write another book?
Oh, I am. I actually am. Right now. I'm about 140 pages into my 4th book right now. That's what sort of started the whole thing of what am I doing in all this downtime except bitching at the TV, for not letting me work. You know what I mean? Now that things are opening up, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to put the books out, and I'm going to start writing a 4th book, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to do it. And so I'm about 140. I actually wrote a story today, 11 pages, an amusing little tale. And yeah, I'm about halfway done. I want to do a 300-page book, and it'll be available. I don't know. Maybe this year, at the end of this year, maybe a little bit later, but yeah. So it's good. I mean, it gives me the incentive to want to be a book writer again, having these books. So it's all good.
Do you feel a pressure to continue your style, and that, now people have certain expectations of you after 3 books?
It's, you know what I've learned after rereading my books, especially my 2nd book, there was a lot of fucking anger going on. And anger is really good for creativity. Or if you're a football player, you know what I mean? Anger is really good for your gig. you know. And so my second book, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of unleashing of emotions and stuff like that. So when I'm reading and writing my fourth book, I have to make sure that it's not going to be, you know, oh, he lost his edge. You know what I mean? Oh, he's just, you know, he's grown up now. He won't write fart jokes or, you know what I mean? So it definitely is in the back of my mind that I have to sort of keep the Monty Python, keep the Three Stooges, you know, keep the absurdity in there for sure, for sure. Or people will just go, well, fuck this guy.
Yeah. Well, so I want to make sure that we mention the new song, because like I told you, I got a press release the other day that there's a brand new JIZZY Pearl's Love Hate single available. And so tell us where we can get that.
Well, on the I guess Spotify, internet, you know, it's the first single off my record called Hell California. And yeah, it's soul mama. It's kind of I like it. It's sort of Back in Blackish. You know what I mean? The song, it's very, I mean, it's three fucking chords, you know, so you can't go wrong.
That's
You
all
know,
you really need.
Ramones.
Yeah. Anything past three chords may be overdoing it, in my opinion. But
Well, I'm certainly not the best guitar player in the world, so you know, I'll stick with my E's and my A's and my D's and my G's. That's about as much as
well,
I.
you play a lot of the music on these tracks now, right?
Yeah, I played pretty much all the bass, because it was a small deal, you know, so I did as much as I could in house. I didn't rent and plus with the pandemic, most of the places weren't even open.
Yeah.
So I would do FaceTime with Darren Householder played guitar on this song, most of the record, and some of my English guys from my English band played, and they just sort of flew the files over from the UK. I have a guy in Scotland, a bass player, and he flew his files over. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, it was a little tedious because you're not in the room to, you know, scold people when they fuck up. But you know, you have to. It is what it is. I mean, there was no, you know, there was no other way of doing it. So, but Darren did a great job. He played great. He's a great guitar player. Anyway,
Great guitar player, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, it was good. It was, and you know, he's played on some of my records before, so there's an understanding of you know. And Chili, my drummer Dave Moreno, he's done most of my records, so we can talk on the phone arrangements and stuff like that, and I know that he'll give me what I need.
Is there a time frame for that record coming out?
Supposedly February 2022. You know, there'll be the usual singles every few months, and that's sort of the plan. I have a tentative UK tour in February of next year for a few weeks, and so that's what we're planning. I mean, barring any sort of, you know, nightmare.
And then you have Quiet Riot still, which you're getting back out there with it, right? There's stuff coming up.
Yeah, we got a bunch of gigs, and I think I'm busy every weekend in July and August. And yeah, I mean, you know, God help us. We're opening up, and everyone's doing gigs again, and we all are, you know, fingers crossed, hoping that we can, you know, work. We want to work.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it seems I don't really want to work. I want to stay here and just talk to people who work from the corner of my living room. But it's not for everybody.
Where it's safe.
It's so safe. This has become the, you know, this is, I wish I would have started this earlier. This, you know, just talking to an inanimate object is so rewarding. And then, you know, the funny thing is then they pay me for this. So even that's,
no, it's a good, hey, everybody's branching out and doing stuff that maybe they didn't think that they were going to do, or maybe, and then they find that maybe they enjoy it. You know what I mean? That like me writing, I love writing. I really do. There's something so enjoyable about rereading something that you've written out of your imagination, and it's good, it's funny, and it's just, it's very rewarding. So yeah, I mean, it's killer.
Do you think there'll ever be a Seymour Butts reunion?
I don't know what is he still around?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing that the internet put him away like it did everybody else.
You know,
That
his
industry is
house, let me
free.
tell you, when I went to his house, he had about 20 AVN awards. I mean, that guy, I mean, he was a real dude. You know, he was a real guy, and he had a real warehouse. I mean, he had, you know, there was a real industry, you know, and it's just, yeah. I mean, that's just, I've done so much weird shit in my life, you know what I mean? Because you don't want the day job, so but you have to work. Like I used to drive strippers around at night. You know what I mean? Like at 4 a.m.
Hmm.
I was the bodyguard, you know what I mean, the driver for these chicks, and it was good money, you know, but it was dark. It was, I
Yeah.
mean, it was just, there's stories about that in some of these books about me sitting on the floor of a hotel room at 3 a.m., you know what I mean, waiting for her to come out of the hotel room, and then us having to dash down the hall, you know, to run away from the guy, and it was just crazy
Real.
shit,
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
shit. But you know, anything, you know, to stave off the dreaded day job.
Yes. That is the enemy to anyone who's creative, the day job. And if you can avoid that and make some interesting memories in the time, that's a good thing. I got to recommend that people read this book. I got more crickets than friends because if only to read Jizzy Pearl's interpretation of Christmas Carol, just for that alone.
Nice.
Uh, but just for that alone, and again, I don't want to ruin it, so people got to read it. But just that alone is worth getting this book. You can go to jizzypearl.net. You can get a physical copy, and there's really not that many left, and maybe 100 or less.
Less. You know,
Yeah.
by the time this video comes out, they might even be gone. I mean, who the fuck knows?
And so, in Jizzy Signs and Numbers, these are they also available on Kindle or any of those kind of platforms when they sell
Yeah,
out?
they are, but you know, I have found that people generally don't buy the Kindles as much. I thought that it would be a big seller, but people want the physical. They want they want it in their hands.
Well, I think also people remember it when it came out. They want what all the hype was about, And I think also people are fans of holding physical media. What about audiobook?
You know, I don't know. I guess it just is. It's just a weird. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to be. You're my first interview for books. You know what I mean? I usually talk about music, and music is very effortless for me to talk about because I've been a musician forever and ever. But being a book writer, you sort of have to shift gears a little bit, and it's just a whole new realm, you know, angst and unhappy endings and this and now my fourth book, which is being written as we speak. So it's a good deal, and I guess I'll get better at doing interviews about books the
Well,
more
it
I
is a
do.
different thing. And like you said, you're used to having a band with you. I did some appearances with Carlos Gavazzo, formerly of Quiet Riot, and he was saying it's strange to do an appearance by himself. He's used to having his band with him. And then, like, to just sit there and now I'm the attention is an odd thing. Well, writing this book, here you are, and and it's your life as well. That's the other thing. A
That's another
song you could
thing.
hide.
It's you know Zodiac Mind Warp is.
Mhm.
Z lives in England, and he was a friend of mine, and he's written a million books too. I have some of his books actually in my bookcase, and he was just reading the book, and he was going, "It's so fucking honest, man. It's so fucking honest." And I guess as a writer, you really do have to sort of open up more than you would in a song. You know, like you can write songs about anything. You can make up songs about love that maybe you're not really even in love, but when you write a book, you really do have to sort of cut yourself open a little bit, especially when you talk about yourself or semi autobiographical. So I read some of my stuff, and it's just it's a little heavy, you know, to sort of be on the page naked like that. So yeah, it's a weird sort of freakish honesty that you have to, you know, give of yourself to be a writer, to write. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's trippy.
So it's definitely a challenge. And I'm sure for anyone who's attempted it thinking, well, what the hell? I'll just crank out a book. It's not that easy. And then also, and a lot of people have stories, but to tell the stories in such detail, as I was saying, like you do, you paint that picture. I'm picturing these things. I story about getting thrown out of the whiskey. You picture the doors, you picture the stage, you picture no pun intended on the doors, but you
Yeah.
picture the moment, and I think that's a great craft. And I think for a lot of people who may be just used to reading rock biographies, I think they'll enjoy this.
You know
Different
why that particular story is so funny is because I went to school with that guy.
Mhm.
We were friends in high school, and so it evolved around him getting that part and me sort of not getting that part and me thinking that maybe I could have gotten that part, which is complete absurdity. I'm not a fucking actor. I'm not a I acted in high school, like, you know what I mean, just because it was an easy A. Anyone that was in drama in high school knows that basically you just get an A by showing up. So that's why
We're
I went
talking
in.
we're talking about a story in the book that is portrayed, and it's obviously. I mean, I think we can say that it's supposed to be Val Kilmer, and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be the Doors movie, and this big party at the whiskey. And I think so for those who've read the book, they know the story, and it really is so vivid, and you can feel the sort of hostility as well,
Oh
towards
yeah.
this. Yeah,
Well, there was
towards this.
definitely, I mean, look, I auditioned for the Doors movie. I Penelope Spheris, who did that Decline movie, she called me up and I just got my record deal, and she goes, "You need to audition for this movie. You need to go to," and so I went and met Oliver Stone. I mean, I went to his studio, and you were seeing all these Ray Manzarek's, and you would, you know what I mean, guys with the glasses, and they all looked at me, and you know what I mean. It was just, it was surreal. And I went in there, and basically within about 10 minutes, he measured me up and said, "You really aren't an actor, are you?" And I said, "No." And then he sort of told me that Val had already gotten the part and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, but I had just gotten a huge record deal. So we shook hands and I went off to my destiny, and, he went off to his.
Yeah, and then you have this premiere, which is a whole nother story that people need to read uh, in the book. So I got more crickets than friends. So again, remind people to go to jizzypearl.net and check it out, and all the other things you have going on in your career as well.
Well, yeah, the jizzypearl.net is where you get the books. And my next two books are going to come out in a couple of weeks. And the Trilogy of Terror is what I'm calling them. And you need to have all three. You need to so you can have a complete vision of hell, um, and put it on your bookshelf or put it on your there. I gave a book to Stephen Piercy a long time ago, and he told me it was great toilet reading.
Hmm.
Because you could sit on the toilet and you could read 3 or 4 pages or 5 pages, and it was very, you know, succinct, and
That's a good
yeah,
point. Yeah. And then you can
good.
come back, depending on how regular you are,
Yeah,
come back the next
nice,
day, you
nice.
get another couple stories,
Yeah,
and fiber willing, you come back every day,
yeah.
you read a
Or
few stories because they are digestible, no pun intended, the stories. And what I love about it is you don't know where they're going to go. So you don't know if the story is going to be a page, 5 pages, 10 pages. It's just it's a different thing, and I think people will dig it.
I hope so. I mean, they're all going to get their books and they're all going to read them, and I encourage people to write me and tell me what they think. You know what I mean? I remember one time some guy came up to me at a Rat gig, and he goes, "I bought your book," and I go, "Well, what'd you think?" He goes, "You're weird," and that's all he could think to say. I guess because he was thinking it was going to be like The Dirt, and I
Right.
was going to tell everyone about my heroin addiction, or whatever. But some people it might be a little too Bukowski, it might be a little too Black Mirror. But I don't know. I think if you dig Dave Chappelle, those old DVDs, if you dig that kind of Monty Python and the dark humor, I think people will dig it.
The back of the book should have that quote. He's weird, random.
Nice. Yeah,
you're weird. Random Rat fan. JIZZY,
yeah,
we're talking about
hashtag he's fucked.
JIZZY, we're talking about all these crazy stories. I feel like we got to wrap it up, but we should end with something that we can get a blabbermouth headline out of and sell some books.
Please. I want my clicks.
After the last interview that we did, we went over your career, and I do recommend people watch it. And people really did enjoy it. When you do these things, we're just having a conversation. You never know if people are going to be interested, but people really seem to like it. The thing that I never talked to you about was Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses. For some reason, we didn't get into it.
Oh, we glossed over that, did we?
Maybe. I was so excited to get to the Ratt and Quiet Riot stories that we forgot Steven Adler. So after Ratt, you were the lead singer for a band called Adler's Appetite.
Right.
And this was the first time that Steven, he tried little things, but this was going to be his first sort of rock project back. The band was Robbie Crane on bass, who was in Ratt with you as well. Kerry Kelly, who's now in Night Ranger, I believe. And he's been in every band at one time or another. And then Brent Muscat from Faster Pussycat. And then Steven Adler on drums.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Well, it came together, I think, through Kerry and Robbie. They asked me to do it. And like I said, we were in Ratt, Kerry and I at the same time. Robbie, rather. And I didn't really know him back then. I didn't know any of those guys other than seeing them at clubs or occasionally. So I just showed up to rehearsal, and I don't know, he had such a crazy checkered past. I don't know what I was expecting, but he was just normal. And we played the songs, and we started to go out on tour, and Guns N' Roses had not toured for so long, you know what I mean, that people freaked out. When we went to Europe and Mexico and South America and stuff like that, it was kind of like we were the Beatles. In a little bit of a way. We were drawing 800 to 1,000 people in Spain and Italy and in Mexico. And it was crazy. Because of the music, because people dig that Appetite record and they hadn't heard it. And so for a while it was, champagne and caviar. It was quite good. And then he sort of fell off the wagon a couple of times, and then it wasn't so good.
Yeah, and, he definitely had a lot of substance issues on and off during that time. He would be clean for a while, and then he would slip. This was a struggle for him. Tell me the story about you and Steven going to the airport together to go overseas.
How much of that can I actually?
Just basically going through the metal detectors is what I'm getting at.
Well, we all went to the airport. This was with Brent as well. We went to the airport, and Steven would sort of disappear. He would go buy a bunch of stuff. He would show up with 8 pairs of sweatpants or 16 harmonicas. He would just, you know what I mean? Or wallets. Everyone wanted a wallet. He would just, he was kind of childlike in that way, that he would just buy shit. And so we'd go to the airport, and he'd disappear. And we, about 5 minutes before the plane, we have him paged, and he'd show up, and we get on the plane. And I guess this time he didn't show up. He split for some reason.
Story I remember, JIZZY, maybe I'm wrong, but what I remember is you guys go through the metal detector. Steven's with you. And as you guys get to the other side, Steven turns around and says he has to get something and leaves. And he misses the flight
Well,
altogether.
he did miss the flight, and he had fallen off the wagon again, and we were going to Mallorca, Spain, or something, and we had a connection in Atlanta, and he didn't make the flight. And I called Robbie and I said, "What do we do?" And he goes, "Well, go to Atlanta, we'll sort it out." And so me and Brent went to Atlanta, and then I guess Carrie and Robbie tried to find him. He was just going crazy, and it ended up that we all went to Spain without him. And when we showed up at the airport, there were TV cameras there. There was news organizations, because Steven Adler, Guns N' Roses, was going to play Spain. It was this big deal. And so we sort of had to do a tap dance, the old health issue problem solution thing. And then he showed up a day later and then just basically said, "Well, I didn't miss the gig, so here I am." And
Everything's fine.
Yeah. And
He
he didn't miss the gig, and everything was fine.
Yeah, and not to make light of his situation, because addiction is a horrible thing, but I spent some time with him around then. One day you would come to his house and he'd have all his platinum records, and then the next day you'd come over and they would all have been sold. Yeah, and so or he would sell some of his paintings, and you would learn you can't give someone like that cash, because if they're addicted, they're always going to find substance. And so but it was really a rocky thing for you. At one point, he was. First of all, have you ever spoke to him since?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Okay, so you're on good terms.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I left the band for more than a couple of reasons. But we had done all the stuff, and I didn't want to do it anymore, so I didn't do it. And they carried on. Steven carried on with a bunch of different band members, Chips and Uff, and a couple of different singers, and they went through their shenanigans. And now I guess he's sober, and sober enough, and so I guess he's doing good now. I mean, he's got a band, and they do gigs, and they make good money, and it's just he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to get out into the world yet, and now he's sort of like all of us, matured and gotten older, and now he can handle it. And now he's I guess now he's ready to rock.
Yeah, thankfully we don't hear these stories like we used to, because I got to be honest, I think we all thought this guy wasn't long, for the world. And we're talking about 15, these stories are 15, 14 years old or something. And so thankfully that he's alive and has a handle on his addiction. I got to ask though, he threatened you at one point, and you got to tell me what he said, because I think that this is the headline. I'm trying to give, this is the one I want.
I knew that this was, I knew that he thought that he thought I was having an affair with his wife or something like that. I think he was a little crazy, and
he was paranoid.
Yeah. And he threatened to poke me in the eye with a soldering iron. And yeah.
So hold on, Jizzy. If any of the news organizations are watching,
stab me in the eye with a soldering iron. I believe that was the quote.
So if any news organizations are looking for a way to help us sell some books here, Steven Adler threatened to stab JIZZY Pearl in the eye with a soldering iron. That's your headline. We're giving that to you free of charge. All you got to do is promote the podcast and the book. But so did he say that in an interview or something, or did he actually said it to you?
I don't know. He didn't say it to me. We were playing the Joint. Ratt was playing the Joint, and I think he tried to get backstage or something like that. And I think I believe that was the quote he used or something like that. It was a long time ago. I mean, it was but it is a memorable phrase for sure.
You don't hear it every
I didn't
day.
even know he had a soldering iron.
It's amazing. The fact that his mind even thought of a soldering iron is amazing. Jizzy, I gotta say, I enjoy having these conversations with you. We always end with the funniest thing. Last time we ended this great history of your career with this story about how your father knew Hervé Villechaize, who was Tattoo from Fantasy Island, and everyone who stuck to the end of this interview and heard the stories about how Hervé would sit on your father's lap and you would come home high thinking that he was a ventriloquist dummy. This is incredible. Now, Steven Adler wants to poke your eye out with a soldering iron, stab you in the eye with a soldering iron.
Well, to be fair, 15, 16 years ago, he did. I don't think I don't think he wants to stab me anymore. I think he's doing fine. I think we've let bygones be bygones here, and we've all grown up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope.
Well, anyway, listen, it makes for a good story. It's absurd. We only talked a small part about that part of your career. There's so much more insanity. Who knows? Maybe the fourth book. There's a.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
The fourth book will be. It's well written because you can see the progression as you write. You know what I mean? Like hopefully you make better records. You know what I mean? As you become more skilled, and so as a writer, editing these books and going back and reading them, I see the progression of better writing, being, a better writer. So this fourth book, I definitely have to get my mojo on, though. I definitely have to make sure that it doesn't, it's not a snoozer,
Yeah, well, you have something to live up to, but you have no shortage of experiences and stories. And I think that once again, there'll be something for everyone to check out. So anyway, all that information is on JIZZYPEARL.net. He's also, you can find him on social media and then the new music on all the streaming platforms. Jizzy, I appreciate you wasting a little time with me today.
Yeah, it was good. Let's do some gigs.
I think that we'll be doing something around July that we'll announce, hopefully, in the next day or two. That's a tease.
I can't wait to get to Moapa.
Yeah, we call that a tease in the industry. Yeah. All right, Jizzy. Thank you.
All right, take it easy.